we're going to talk about in this lesson this tool right here. Looks like a lollipop. And you've got a dodge, burn, and sponge tool inside of it. Dodging will selectively lighten areas based on your control of a paintbrush. Burning will darken. Sponging will either saturate or desaturate the color from an area. Now let's say we look at this image and we used a couple of spots to lighten up the two actors, and we decide that's okay, but maybe it might have been better if we had equalized the light, and we don't want to reshoot it again. We want to see if we can do that. It is possible that this would work. So the first thing we want to do is lightening of areas. So we come over here and pick up the lollipop right here, the dodge. Now you have a range of shadows, midtones, or highlights. So you think, well, okay, shadows, that makes sense. So I'm going to use shadows. You have a size, of course, your brush down here. We have a large, soft brush. 500 pixels right now. We can change that. I prefer using the brackets, but you can change it down there too. And exposure is the percentage of exposure applied as you work. So you come over here and you start doing this, and you're really flattening it out and lightening it, and it ain't working. So let's press undo, my favorite key in the whole world, and get rid of that. What did we do wrong? Well, we assumed the shadows, and you're right. But we don't want to eliminate the shadows. We want to lighten up more of the midtone areas. So we're going to change that to midtones. And so it doesn't work so crazy fast, I'm going to change the exposure down to about 30%. Somewhere around there. Okay, so midtones, 30%. Come over here and start moving around. And let's come up here too. Check it out. Now you can go too far with it, which sometimes I think I do. Let's do the other side over here too, I suppose, while we're here. Now it takes a bit of practice, it really does, because you are using a paintbrush, and as you move over areas, it's continuing to lighten those areas. So you have to kind of watch it. It takes a little bit of practice, change your exposure, use midtones, highlights, or shadows based on what you're trying to do. So we've kind of evened it out quite a bit, and that's kind of nice. Maybe there's an area we would rather have left darker. So we can reverse the procedure by doing the same thing but using the burn tool. Okay, so you have exposure, and I'm going to lower that down to about 30%. Midtones again, if we're going to accomplish the same thing, maybe. Come over here, use my right bracket to get a little bit of a bigger brush. And as you can see, if I want to do that, I can. You can very carefully darken areas up. So you're using a brush to make it happen. The third one is a sponge. Now the sponge is interesting. What it does is it either saturates more color into an area or it desaturates it and removes it. So if we say desaturate and say come over here to this real tiny bike, we have a flow which is similar to exposure, but it's consistent. It keeps working. The more you work, the more it does it. If I come over here and let me make the brush a little bit smaller, and you can see it is removing color information. It's desaturating that area. And the more I do it with flow, the more it's going to do it. The more I keep going over it, the more it's going to desaturate. That's what flow does. And I'm going to undo that, take it back. How about saturate? What's the opposite? Come over here again, and we can increase the saturation of that little tiny bike. Now again, sometimes if you're doing it right, it's kind of hard to tell before and after. If I press undo, you can see we did indeed increase the saturation. We leveled some of these areas out, and we darkened this area up just a little bit more to bring it back in. All with one basic tool, dodge, burn, sponge. Let's go ahead and get out of here. And we don't have to save it. And there you go.